Happy Advent, everybody. Earlier this week, we received an early Christmas gift from the people over at Daily Wire in the form of a new comedy movie. A movie that promises to be a love letter to early 2000s comedies. And the question on everyone's mind is it any good? It seems to me that this movie is either way worse or way better than people were expecting. And today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to analyze and confute a negative reviewer's take on the movie. So let's unwrap this Christmas present and take a closer look at Lady Ballers. Lady Ballers is a 2023 comedy from the Daily Wire, starring the entire Daily Wire roster, about men who say that they are women to compete and win in women's sports. It's a pretty controversial topic. Today we're going to look at the opposition's view on the movie, and I will offer up my views as we go along. This article comes from the Decider titled Stream It or Skip It, Lady Ballers on Daily Wire Plus, in which far-right guys try to dunk on trans athletes. It starts. Lady Ballers is a new feature-length comedy exclusive to Daily Wire Plus, starring, directed by, co-written by, Daily Wire CEO Jeremy Boring, not a typo, and featuring cast members and drop-in guest stars culled from the Daily Wire's stable of commentators, and Ted Cruz, as in Senator Ted Cruz. Please feel free to deep sigh here. This is a movie about men identifying as women so they can compete in a women's basketball league, told from a conservative political culture war and decidedly transphobic point of view. It should probably be called Triggering the Libs, the movie. I'm pretty sure that was their runner-up before they settled on Lady Ballers. And I bet it has all kinds of completely reasonable points to make. But before we jump to that conclusion, let's find out what the movie has to say. The gist. It's 2008. Rob, played by Jeremy Boring, is an exasperated high school basketball coach. His team is sucking ass. Playing like JV girls is how he characterizes it. They hit the locker room at halftime and Rob delivers an inspirational speech to fire them up, and it consists of Blither urging them to be men and the repetition of the phrase, "Winners are just losers who win, and they are inspired." Which, yeah, it's a parody of those scenes in sports movies where the coach rouses the defeated men to get back out there and win with an inspiring speech. The Decider continues. They come back and win the championship, and that ends up being the high point of Rob's career, because 15 years later, he can't inspire a bunch of bored dudes at the rec center to stop looking at their phones long enough to toss a ball at a hoop. I mean, all they want to do is look at their phones. That's all people do nowadays. Look at their phones. Phones that go bleep and bring and chirp chirp. It's so crazy. It is almost all people do nowadays. A study by Peter Sussick concluded that the average adolescent spends about 6 hours and 59 minutes on a screen per day, and that average increases to over 8 hours for a teenager. Almost half a teenager's waking hours are spent on their phone. And I haven't found any studies to back this up, but I'm entirely confident that has affected sports and academics. At the end of that paragraph, Decider references the scene where the high schoolers' phones all start having a frenzy of notifications.
Nothing? No.
So either Decider didn't understand that was a joke, or they felt that was a joke that needed to be addressed, which is kind of ironic considering that there are way more provocative jokes in this movie that are just ripe for a news outlet like this to take apart. Desperate, Rob gets a job waiting tables at a restaurant where all the male servers dress in drag. Turns out one of his former players works there too, and Rob is inspired. Considering society is overrun with woke leftist maniacs who believe anyone can identify as anything, is that not what they believe? Is that not what Anyways, he reunites his championship squad, Daily Wire podcasters Blaine Crane, Jake Crane, David Cohn, as well as Tyler Fisher and Danielle Considine, dresses them in wigs and pink uniforms, and enrolls them in the Women's Basketball League so they can stop being losers and become winners again. Ingenious. Not really. Ingenious would mean original or inventive. This is an idea that the Daily Wire neither originated nor invented. And as the group of aging white guys wipe the floor with female basketball pros, Decider says this as if there's any evidence to disprove that this would happen. Of course, there isn't any, and in fact, all of the evidence supports Lady Ballers. Famously, women's tennis legend Serena Williams lost 1-6 to 203rd ranked men's tennis player Carsten Brosic. Brosic went on to win 6-2 against Serena Williams' sister, Venus. And infamously, Leah Thomas, formerly Will Thomas, came in first in the 100-yard, 200-yard, and 500-yard freestyle events at the Ivy League Women's Swimming and Diving Championships. Decider continues, the movie throws in all kinds of crap to make the snowflakes melt. COVID mask jokes, pronoun jokes, Bud Light jokes, anti-Semitic comedy, jokes about not understanding science, etc. Most of this is true, except I don't remember any anti-Semitic comedy. And if perhaps there was, Daily Wire's own Ben Shapiro has raved about this movie, who, if you didn't know, is Jewish himself. And this brings us to a larger conversation about comedy as a whole. What, if anything, is off limits? What is so taboo that you can't make a joke out of it? My personal belief is that nothing should be off the table, because you cannot control how other people act, especially over a preference like this. You can only control how you respond. And if you think the joke wasn't funny or it stepped over your presupposed line, you can choose not to laugh. The best way to hurt a comedian is to not laugh. That's how you vote in comedy. But you cannot force others to think a joke wasn't funny because you found it offensive. That would be very domineering of you. Meanwhile, Rob's sweet little daughter goes to a school that's so woke, she says her classmate Mary Margaret has a penis, and she has to whiteboard an elaborate schematic in order to explain sexuality and gender to a bunch of dudes who just know the world consists of boys and girls, and that's it! Schools are teaching kids a false gender ideology as truth at a younger and younger age. It's a very smart tactic, in a sense. During the Soviet Union, the Soviets would shove children full of their agenda, and these children would later denounce their parents to the government. And in the book, 1984, the Parsons kids are incredibly devoted party ideologues, because the party knows that you don't control the future by convincing adults, but by shaping children. Also, Rob's ex-wife is married to an overbearing lib hippie who likes to hug everybody, although maybe not for long, because once Rob resumes being a winner, she seems attracted to him again. Not just any overbearing lib hippie. This overbearing lib hippie is played by Matt Walsh, and if watching Matt Walsh play the most liberal character in this movie is not a draw for anyone on either side of the aisle, I don't know what it is. And yeah, in the end, Rob gets the girl, because women are attracted to winners. Also, the villain of the movie is a journalist, Billy Ray Brandt. So morally void, she makes the nihilists in The Big Lebowski look like helpless little baby bunnies. I'm a journalist. I literally can't be shamed, she says. Why is that a bad thing? Why is that a bad thing? Everyone in this movie plays a caricature to varying degrees of intensity. Rob is the inspiring coach who always has a plan. Chris is the overbearing lib hippie. Michael Knowles quite literally plays a caricature of an Indian. And the Decider would have you believe that all of this is truly unfunny, which is false. Caricatures are inherently hilarious because they make people larger than life, which works great for a comedy. Literally every comedy ever made uses caricatures to some extent because they're not under the notion that everything should be realistic. So where's this all heading? Not outside the bubble, that's for sure. Our take. Lady Ballers takes a complicated topic, trans athletes competing in sports, and addresses it with remarkable nuance and earnest curiosity. It couches a series of well-reasoned points about thorny social conundrums within a poignant and probing satirical farce. It culminates in a tastefully modulated scene in which basketball players get their shorts pulled down in front of everybody, in a touching moment where Rob tells his daughter that boys can't become girls, and girls can't become boys, and that's the way the world works. It doesn't engage in any moronic whataboutism or boast a script consisting almost entirely of snarky reply guy ex-Twitter conservative talking points. It'll really make you think. Kidding! They got you good, didn't they? They got you good. It's racist, sexist, transphobic, and anti-Semitic, and there's really no debating that. Watch me. It's also so amateurish in its visual execution. A Happy Madison stoner comedy looks like a Merchant Ivory production in comparison. Anyone looking for a coherent and logical conservative point of view on transgender issues won't find it here. The movie is an enraged, disdainful, and mean-spirited free-for-all that flips all the same old worn-out lib triggers in an attempt to put progressives in a foamy rage. Perhaps this is how Boring and others on the far end of the political right feel when Disney casts a black woman to play the Little Mermaid. Perhaps they struggle with the idea of societal change. Perhaps they believe in nothing whatsoever and are just lashing out at the stuff they don't understand, don't want to understand, and never will try to understand. Okay, let's break this down. This is a pretty low-budget film compared to movies nowadays. That's true. But to act like this movie doesn't have excellent lighting and cinematography would be a lie. There's one scene that I'm thinking of where the players are all giving their reasons for not joining, and they move into and out of frame in a static shot so naturally. It was amazingly shot, blocked, and staged. And then there are no logical conservative points on their view of transgender issues. Well, the decider either didn't go see the movie, which is entirely likely, or they didn't stay till the end, which is also entirely likely, because the movie is very clear in its message that men are men, women are women, there are differences, people stay in their categories, and there are no in-betweens, and that's beautiful. And then the writer says the movie is enraged and mean-spirited, meant to put libs in a foamy rage. I would disagree and say that the movie is very lighthearted and tackles pretty uncomfortable topics with the view of traditionalism and beauty. And then there's that last bit at the end where about the Daily Wire not understanding and not wanting to understand. The writer seems to have completely blocked out an entire movie the Daily Wire released with the sole purpose of trying to understand left-wing rhetoric. The writer continues, I will say, Lady Ballers is funny on occasion, but only unintentionally. Say when it purports to be defending the purity of women's sports, but stages a scene in which a women's basketball game is played in an empty arena because, quote, nobody likes it, and depicts flabby aging men as infinitely superior athletes to women in their sporting prime, and ultimately considers female athletes as little more than things to be cruelly mocked. You have to admire such an elaborate self-own which can't be executed by just any idiot. Now here is something he misses entirely, and I had this thought too. It would have been very easy for the film to end with the message that men are better than women at sports, so men are always better. But this is not how it ends. It celebrates sexual difference. Boring's character at the end has a line where he's talking to his daughter after she says she wants to be a boy, because boys are better at every sport. And he says, listen, women are better at all kinds of things. They can be nurturing and sensitive and empathetic, better at doing lots of things at once, caring for a lot of people at once. They're better at communicating and building community, and they civilize men. It's the only reason we have a civilization. No women, no world. Plus, mommy brought you into the world. That's a superpower no man will ever have. This movie does not bash women. It bashes men bashing women. The Decider would strongly urge you not to go see this movie, but my recommendation is quite the opposite. This is a very poignant and present film, in a good way. It's not the movie we deserved, but it's the one we needed. The Daily Wire is living up to their name of culture makers. I think the very fact that they release this as a comedy is a very interesting and smart move. You see this with their upcoming Snow White movie as well. That Hollywood and Disney in particular have moved away from making good and honest movies and towards making movies that nobody wants to see. And the Daily Wire would be stupid not to see this void and fill it, because these are things that people will pay money for. Frankly, good on them. I think it's great that they're giving people options. But anyways, give Lady Ballers a chance. Go get Daily Wire Plus. Jordan Peterson's Dragons, Monsters, and Men and Vision and Destiny are well worth the entry fee. And have yourself a Merry Christmas.